Fake HOA president mocked of vet's decorations. The neighborhood rose in fury. What kind of person tears down a hero's tribute just to flex their power? In the quiet cul-de-sac of Willow Grove, where tidy lawns and friendly waves defined the community, a storm was brewing. Karen Whitaker, the self-proclaimed president of the Homeowners Association, had just committed an act so vile it would unravel her reign and ignite the neighborhood in fury. Karen had always been a force, loud, commanding, and obsessed with control. Her emails about approved mailbox colors and regulation lawn ornaments were infamous, but most neighbors tolerated her, assuming she meant well. That illusion shattered on a crisp autumn morning when she stormed into the community park, a beloved green space where kids played and families gathered. At its heart was a small flower garden, meticulously tended by Tom Reynolds, a 72-year-old Vietnam War veteran. Tom, a quiet man who moved with the weight of his past, had planted the garden as a tribute to his fallen comrades. Each bloom red poppies, white lilies, blue forget-me-not scared a story, a name, a memory. Small plaques, etched with the names of soldiers, sat humbly among the flowers. It was sacred ground, respected by all, or so they thought. Karen, however, saw the garden as a violation. Unauthorized landscaping, she called it in a scathing email blast to the neighborhood listserv. She claimed the plaques were clutter and the flowers unapproved. Without consulting anyone, she declared the garden would be restored to HOA standards. The next day, neighbors woke to a horrifying sight. Karen, armed with shears and a shovel, was ripping the garden apart. Petals littered the ground like confetti after a tragedy. Plaques were tossed into a pile, some cracked. Tom, in his wheelchair, watched from the edge of the park, his hands trembling, his face pale with disbelief. "Those are my brothers," he whispered, voice breaking. "She's tearing them apart." Word spread like wildfire. By noon, a crowd had gathered: parents, retirees, teenagers, even a local barista who'd heard the news on her break. They were livid. Karen, undeterred, stood amidst the wreckage, shouting about rules and order. Her voice dripped with condescension as she pointed at Tom. "This man thinks he's above the law because he's a veteran," she sneered. "Those tacky decorations don't belong here." The crowd gasped. A teenager, Mia, filmed the scene on her phone, her hands shaking with rage. The video would later go viral, but in that moment, it was the spark that lit the fuse. The truth about Karen began to unravel. Neighbors, emboldened by her cruelty, started digging. Sarah, a soft-spoken librarian who'd always stayed out of HOA drama, revealed a bombshell. Karen wasn't even the elected HOA president. Months earlier, she manipulated a poorly attended meeting to declare herself leader, forging signatures on the minutes. The real president, a busy single dad named Javier, had been overseas for work and hadn't noticed. Sarah had found the original records buried in a box of HOA files Karen had forgotten to share. The crowd's anger turned to outrage. Karen wasn't just a bully, she was a fraud. But there was more. Mia, the teenager, discovered Karen had been skimming HOA dues for personal expenses: new patio furniture, a fancy sprinkler system, even a weekend trip to a spa. Receipts, carelessly left in a public Dropbox link Karen had shared, told the story. The neighborhood's trust, already frayed, snapped. "You stole from us," shouted Javier, who'd returned just in time to join the crowd. "And you desecrated Tom's garden for what?" "Your ego." Karen's face reddened, but she doubled down, claiming the funds were reallocated for community benefit and the garden was an eyesore. Her lies only fueled the fire. The confrontation reached its peak that evening in the park. The crowd, now dozens strong, formed a semicircle around Karen. Tom, pushed forward by Mia, spoke for the first time. His voice was steady but heavy with pain. "I didn't fight for this country to watch my friends' memories be trashed by someone like you," he said. "Those flowers weren't just plants. They were promises I made to men who never came home." A hush fell over the crowd. Karen, cornered, tried to interrupt, but a new voice cut through, a surprise no one saw coming. It was Mrs. Lynn, an 80-year-old widow who rarely left her house. Known for her quiet demeanor, she'd been watching from her window all day. Now, she stepped forward, leaning on her cane, her eyes blazing. "My husband was in that war, too," she said, her voice trembling but fierce. "He helped Tom plant that garden. You didn't just hurt Tom, you spit on every soldier who gave us this life." The crowd erupted in cheers, some in tears. Mrs. Lynn's words, raw and unexpected, shifted the mood from anger to unity. Karen, for the first time, looked small. The fallout was swift. Karen's lies collapsed under scrutiny. The HOA board, hastily reconvened, stripped her of her title. The stolen funds were traced and legal action loomed. The garden's destruction became a rallying cry. Neighbors, led by Mia and Javier, organized a restoration effort. By week's end, the park was alive again, not just with flowers, but with new plaques, donated tools, and volunteers from beyond Willow Grove. The viral video had drawn support from veterans groups, local businesses, and even strangers online. Tom's garden was no longer just a memorial. It was a symbol of resilience. Karen, meanwhile, vanished from the neighborhood's social fabric. Her house went up for sale, her name a whispered cautionary tale. Some said she moved to another state, others that she was too ashamed to show her face. Either way, her reign was over. The neighborhood, once divided by her petty rules, found new strength in their shared stand against her. Tom, though still scarred, smiled again as he tended the reborn garden, now joined by kids who listened to his stories with wide eyes. In the end, Willow Grove wasn't just a place, it was a community that rose from the ashes of one woman's cruelty. Tom's flowers bloomed brighter, a testament to honor and healing. The neighborhood learned that power built on lies crumbles, but unity forged in truth endures. What do you think? Can one person's arrogance tear a community apart? Or does it take a village to prove them wrong? Share your thoughts.